Country music has always thrived on stories of heartbreak, rebellion, and redemption. But sometimes the drama didn't stay in the songs. It bled into real life in ways far more shocking. Have you ever wondered what happens when country legends cross lines that no stage light can hide? From brutal family tragedies to barroom chaos and backstage busts, these moments remind us that fame doesn't erase flaws. Stick around because some of these stories are so unbelievable, you'll wonder how the music even survived. Spade Cooley. He was once crowned the king of Western swing, a man who could pack dance halls with fiddles and fast-stepping joy. But behind the spotlight, Spade Cooley was unraveling. In 1961, his marriage had collapsed under constant fighting. At his Bakersfield home, things turned unbearably dark. His teenage daughter reportedly saw what no child should, her mother being struck down in a storm of rage. The scene left scars that would never heal. The case became the longest trial in Kern County history, with jurors hearing about shattered bones and a fractured life. Cooley's plea of insanity didn't hold. He was convicted and sent to prison for life. Ironically, just as parole neared, he played a cheerful benefit concert for inmates. Minutes later, his heart gave out. Cooley's story is a chilling reminder that charm on stage can hide deep storms off it. Western swing music carried on, but his name was erased from the genre's proud history. Once a hero of the dance floor, he is now remembered as one of country's darkest cautionary tales. Johnny Paycheck. If you've ever heard "Take this job and shove it," you know Johnny Paycheck built his career on defiance. But in December 1985, his outlaw persona turned into real-life chaos. Days before Christmas, in a small Ohio bar called the North High Lounge, a lighthearted talk over deer meat and jerky spiraled into disaster. Witnesses recalled tempers flaring, drinks fueling the tension, and then Paycheck pulling out a small pistol. In the scuffle, a man named Larry Wise was grazed across the scalp. Miraculously, the wound wasn't fatal, but the fallout was devastating. Paycheck argued self-defense, but the jury wasn't buying it. He was convicted and sentenced to 7 to 9 years, though he only served 22 months before a governor's pardon. In prison, he sobered up, earned a GED, and even wrote songs about life behind bars. But the outlaw label stuck harder than ever. For some fans, the shooting made him too real. For others, it cemented his place in the mythology of country's wildest years. Either way, the headlines ensured Johnny Paycheck would forever live in both music history and crime lore. Merle Haggard. Before Merle Haggard became the voice of working-class America, he was just another kid chasing shortcuts in Bakersfield. By his teens, he was caught stealing and drifting through reform schools. But it all came crashing down on Christmas Eve, 1957. That night, Haggard attempted a botched tavern robbery that landed him in one of the toughest places in America, San Quentin State Prison. He was just 20 years old when he stepped inside those walls. While serving nearly 3 years, Haggard witnessed Johnny Cash's legendary prison concert, a moment that planted a seed of change. Behind bars, he studied welding, wrote songs, and decided that music might just be his lifeline. When he finally walked free, Haggard carried the weight of his rap sheet, but also the determination to turn it around. A governor's pardon years later cleared his record, but the scars remained in his music. Songs like Branded Man and Mama Tried weren't just art, they were testimony. Merle Haggard's fall and rise showed the world that even prison bars can't silence true talent. His redemption became one of country's greatest comeback tales, a living example of second chances. David Allan Coe. Some country singers just play the outlaw role. David Allan Coe actually lived it. By the time most kids were still learning to ride bikes, Coe was already stuck in reform school. His youth was a revolving door of arrests, escapes, and time spent in some of the toughest prisons in Ohio. The charges were serious: auto theft, burglary, and armed holdups. At one point, Coe even claimed involvement in an inmate's death, though court files confirm mostly robbery and violent run-ins, not homicide. Whether he exaggerated or not, one thing is clear. His rap sheet was as real as the ink on it. In solitary confinement, Coe taught himself guitar and made a vow to make his fortune legally through music. After parole in 1967, he lived in a hearse outside Nashville's Ryman Auditorium, begging for a shot. Eventually, his gritty songs and raw honesty kicked open the doors. Critics have long debated how much of his outlaw image is truth and how much is tall tale. But what's undeniable is that David Allan Coe's rough past gave his songs a dangerous authenticity. In country's wild west of storytelling, few ever matched him. Billy Joe Shaver. With Billy Joe Shaver, you never knew if the man was a poet or a powder keg. A legendary songwriter behind hits for Waylon Jennings and others, Shaver was beloved in Nashville circles. But in 2007, his name splashed across headlines for reasons no artist wants. In a Waco area saloon, Shaver got into a heated argument with local regular Billy Coker. Words turned sharp, knives flashed, and according to witnesses, Shaver asked one chilling question: "Where do you want it?" Seconds later, Coker was struck in the face by a small caliber bullet. Miraculously, Coker survived. Shaver was charged with aggravated assault and faced the possibility of 20 years in prison. At trial, he insisted he acted only after being threatened. Willie Nelson even appeared in court for moral support. In just 2 hours, the jury acquitted him. But the legend only grew. The incident inspired Dale Watson's song, "Where Do You Want It?" and forever cemented Shaver's reputation as the songwriter who lived the outlaw life a little too literally. He walked free, but the shadow of that night followed him until his final days. Waylon Jennings. Waylon Jennings wasn't just singing about being an outlaw, he was living it. In 1977, Jennings was in a Nashville studio working on new tracks when his drummer mailed him a package. Trouble was, the package was filled with white powder, and federal agents were already tracking it. Agents stormed the studio mid-session. Imagine the scene. Waylon, headphones on, guitar in hand, suddenly facing badges flashing at the control booth. According to legend, while the paperwork was being sorted, Jennings managed to flush most of the stash, leaving officers nearly empty-handed. He was charged with possession and conspiracy, but sloppy warrants and bad handling of evidence caused the case to fall apart. Jennings didn't just walk free, he turned the ordeal into art. His song, "Don't You Think This Outlaw Bits Done Got Out of Hand," was a tongue-in-cheek confession wrapped in steel string swagger. The arrest cost him money, nearly wrecked his health, and made him reevaluate his lifestyle. But it also cemented his status as the face of country's outlaw movement. Waylon lived the edge, then sang about it, blurring the line between myth and reality in a way few artists ever dared. Johnny Cash. Johnny Cash built his legacy on walking the line, but in 1965, that line nearly broke him. On October 4th, while passing through El Paso Airport, customs agents searched his guitar case and found over 1,000 tablets of stimulants and sedatives. Cash spent the night in jail, paid a $1,000 fine, and walked away with a suspended sentence. But the humiliation hit him harder than the penalty. Fans who adored his Man in Black mystique now saw headlines about pill bottles instead of gospel shows. Cash himself admitted it was a turning point. Determined to change, he tossed the pills into a riverbed and doubled down on faith, family, and music. In the years that followed, he staged iconic prison concerts at Folsom and San Quentin, turning his image from cautionary tale into redemption story. The El Paso bust wasn't just another tabloid headline. It was the moment Johnny Cash stared into the abyss and chose to fight his way back. Without that stumble, we may never have gotten the raw, powerful Johnny, who later sang cocaine blues with a conviction only the guilty could deliver. Jamey Johnson. Jamey Johnson was known for keeping country real, gritty lyrics, a voice like aged whiskey, and a rebel streak that fans loved. But in 2024, he made headlines for all the wrong reasons. South of Nashville, troopers clocked him speeding at 87 in a 70 zone. A simple traffic stop spiraled when officers searched the car and found bags of marijuana and pre-rolled joints. In Tennessee, that wasn't just a ticket, it was enough for a felony charge. Suddenly, one of country's most respected modern traditionalists was facing a courtroom instead of a microphone. Johnson bonded out quickly, but the story lit up fan forums and talk shows. Was this another case of outdated state laws colliding with modern attitudes? Or was it a straight-up lapse in judgment? Whatever the answer, Johnson's reputation took a hit. Songs that once felt like homespun wisdom now carried an extra edge, as if listeners wondered how much of the rebel image was performance and how much was personal. Whether his case ends in probation or time served, Johnson's 2024 bust might be the moment he truly inherits the outlaw mantle, a role country music always seems to reserve for one of its best. Randy Travis. Randy Travis was the golden boy of country music, clean-cut, smooth-voiced, and beloved for classics like Forever and Ever, Amen. But in 2012, the world saw a very different Randy. Late one night in rural Texas, a passerby spotted a wrecked Trans Am on the highway, and a man sprawled nearby, disoriented and stripped of dignity. That man was Randy Travis. When officers arrived, they said he smelled of alcohol and resisted their attempts to get him to safety. Things escalated, with reports that Travis hurled threats at the very people trying to help him. He was arrested for driving while intoxicated and retaliation, facing fines, probation, and mandatory programs. Then came the mugshots and dash cam footage. They spread like wildfire online, instantly staining his polished image. Just months later, tragedy compounded the chaos. Travis suffered a massive stroke that left him with lasting health struggles. Fans who once saw him as untouchable now saw a man unraveling. Yet in a strange way, his story became one of survival. Despite it all, Randy still appears at events, supported by an industry that remembers the angelic voice he gave them. His fall from grace was shocking, but his resilience is proof that legends never completely fade. Glen Campbell. By the early 2000s, Glen Campbell was a household name. Rhinestone Cowboy was still spinning on radios, and his image as a wholesome entertainer seemed untouchable. But in 2003, everything changed on a Phoenix roadway. At 67 years old, Campbell crashed his BMW into another car and drove off. Police tracked him down and reported his blood alcohol level at nearly 3 times the legal limit. To make matters worse, he reportedly lashed out at an officer, demanding to speak with the police chief. The arrest led to charges of extreme driving under the influence, hit and run, and assaulting an officer. Campbell spent 10 nights in jail, where, in true showman fashion, he led inmates in a cappella renditions of Rhinestone Cowboy. He also completed community service and later released a gospel album titled Testimony, a subtle nod to his struggles. The incident tarnished his image, but it also sparked broader conversations about aging, fame, and addiction. In the years that followed, Campbell bravely battled Alzheimer's, showing vulnerability and grace even as his memory faded. His 2003 arrest may have cracked his public mask, but it also revealed the human behind the legend. Willie Nelson. By 2010, Willie Nelson wasn't just a country icon, he was practically American folklore. So when border agents in Sierra Blanca, Texas, opened the door of his tour bus and caught a whiff of trouble, the headlines wrote themselves. Inside, they found 6 ounces of marijuana, more than enough to trigger a felony charge under Texas law. But here's where things took a turn. A sympathetic county attorney downgraded the charges to a misdemeanor. Nelson paid a fine, cracked jokes about starting a teapot party, and carried on like only Willie could. Instead of breaking him, the bust gave him a late career boost. Fans rallied behind him, seeing the arrest not as a downfall, but as proof that Willie was still walking his own line, no matter the consequences. For Nelson, the run-in became more than a legal hiccup. It reinforced his lifelong stance as America's most lovable outlaw, someone willing to challenge outdated laws while still delivering timeless music. In the end, it wasn't just an arrest. It was a reminder that even legends aren't immune to flashing lights on the highway. Hank Williams, Jr. Hank Williams, Jr. has always lived larger than life, with a reputation for rowdy behavior that matched his thunderous voice. But in 2006, the headlines weren't about music. At the upscale Peabody Hotel in Memphis, a young waitress accused him of crossing the line, claiming he grabbed her, demanded a kiss, and held her in a choke-like grip. Williams turned himself in on an assault warrant, but quickly fired back, calling the accusations a ploy for money. Prosecutors eventually dropped the case for lack of evidence, but the damage was done. Tabloids had a field day, and sponsors grew cautious. For an artist whose career thrived on the idea of being a rowdy friend, suddenly the rowdiness didn't sound so charming. The incident serves as a reminder of how quickly an image can unravel. Even without a conviction, public trust is fragile. Hank Jr. survived and kept touring, but the shadow of that Memphis night lingers. One more chapter in country's uneasy dance with fame and fallout. Ty Herndon. In the mid-90s, Ty Herndon was on the rise, his single What Mattered Most climbing the charts. Then came a morning in 1995 that flipped everything upside down. At Gateway Park in Fort Worth, undercover officers arrested him after an incident involving indecent exposure and possession of methamphetamine. The story shocked fans. Herndon was scheduled to perform for a police convention just 90 minutes later. Instead of tuning guitars, he was facing flashing lights and mugshots. The indecent exposure charge was eventually dropped, but he pled guilty to possession, entered rehab, and served probation. Surprisingly, his career didn't collapse outright. Radio spins of his music actually climbed, and Herndon kept recording. Years later, he would reflect on the bust as a turning point, one that forced him to confront truths about himself and live more openly. What began as a humiliating moment became the start of redemption. Herndon's story proves that sometimes the lowest points aren't career-ending. They can be the very thing that sparks a comeback. Mindy McCready. Mindy McCready had it all in the late 90s. Talent, beauty, and hits like Guys Do It All the Time. But behind the spotlight, her life was coming apart. At just 28, she was caught forging a prescription for painkillers. That single charge led to 3 years of probation, fines, and public embarrassment. Instead of bouncing back, McCready spiraled. DUI arrests, domestic fights, probation violations, one stumble seemed to lead to another. Tabloids tracked every court appearance, plastering her mugshots across front pages. Attempts at comebacks were overshadowed by new trouble, and Nashville's once bright star seemed trapped in a storm she couldn't escape. Her story became a tragic study in how addiction, mental health struggles, and media scrutiny can bury even the strongest talent. By the time she passed away in 2013, the conversation had shifted from her music to her struggles. Mindy McCready remains one of the saddest examples of how fame can magnify pain and how sometimes the songs of heartbreak reflect the singer's life a little too closely. Sam Hunt. Sam Hunt brought a fresh pop country sound that won over a whole new generation of fans. But in 2019, his career slammed into a roadblock. Nashville police pulled him over after spotting his SUV going the wrong way down a street. His blood alcohol level tested at nearly twice the legal limit. The arrest made national headlines. Hunt pled guilty, served 2 days in a DUI center, and was ordered to install an ignition interlock device on his car. Fans hoped it was a one-time mistake. But in 2025, troopers stopped him again, this time for speeding. The kicker? That court-ordered interlock device was missing. While these offenses didn't carry the weight of some of the other crimes on this list, the repeat headlines painted a picture of recklessness that clashed with his laid-back image. For a star marketed on easy charm and boy-next-door relatability, the legal missteps raise questions about responsibility. Sam Hunt's story is proof that sometimes the damage isn't in the punishment, it's in the perception. A single mistake can fade, but repeated ones can stick like a bad chorus you can't unhear. Zach Bryan. Rising star Zach Bryan was riding high in 2023. His blend of raw songwriting and heartfelt performances made him the poster child for country's new wave. But one September afternoon in rural Oklahoma, his temper almost unraveled that image. When troopers pulled over his security guard during a routine stop, Bryan jumped out of his own truck, visibly impatient. Dashcam footage later showed him confronting officers, refusing to sit back down, and even saying, "I'll go to jail, let's do it." And they did. He was booked for obstruction. Within hours, Bryan took to social media with an unfiltered apology, admitting he'd let his frustration get the better of him. The move worked. Fans forgave him, and the misdemeanor was dismissed after 6 months of spotless behavior. The incident humanized him in a way no ballad could. It showed the world that even rising stars stumble, but owning up fast and sincerely can keep a career from derailing. Bryan turned what could have been a black mark into a lesson in humility. Chris Young. Chris Young wasn't known for trouble. His smooth voice and clean reputation made him one of Nashville's safest bets. But in 2024, a late-night compliance check in a Nashville bar put him in the headlines for all the wrong reasons. State agents claimed Young blocked their exit and even struck an officer. That allegation exploded across news sites, complete with mugshots that stunned fans who couldn't believe the face behind "Getting You Home" was now tied to a barroom brawl. Then the twist came. Security footage surfaced, showing almost no contact between Young and the agents. Prosecutors quickly dropped the charges, but not before the damage had been done. For weeks, Young's reputation was in freefall. Instead of sulking, he flipped the script. He spoke out about body cam transparency and even launched efforts to help other musicians caught in legal disputes. What looked like a career-ending story turned into a PR victory, proving sometimes the truth doesn't just set you free, it earns you respect. Chris Cagle. Chris Cagle once lit up the charts with hits like "I Breathe In, I Breathe Out." But by 2008, his personal life started overshadowing his music. That year, police were called to his Texas home after a heated argument with his girlfriend. Both were arrested on domestic assault charges. Neither testified, and Cagle was cleared, but the headlines stuck. 5 years later, in 2013, trouble knocked again. This time, troopers stopped him after he ran a red light, and he was arrested for driving under the influence. No one was hurt, but the back-to-back incidents left radio programmers skittish. Cagle eventually stepped away from touring, citing family and sobriety as priorities. Fans saw the move as bittersweet, proof that sometimes the best way to save yourself is to walk away. His story underlines how even relatively minor offenses can pile up until a career stalls completely. Lynn Anderson. Lynn Anderson gave the world "I Never Promised You a Rose Garden," a song of optimism that still spins decades later. But in her final years, Anderson's name was more likely to appear in police reports than on charts. In 2004, she was arrested for driving under the influence. A year later, she shocked fans by being caught shoplifting a Harry Potter DVD, an incident that escalated when she struck an officer. More DUI arrests followed in 2006 and again in 2014, the last after a minor crash in Nashville. Courts ordered rehab, fines, and license suspensions. Anderson apologized repeatedly, but the cycle continued. By the time of her passing in 2015, her legacy was bittersweet, remembered both for her groundbreaking success and for the struggles that clouded her later years. Her story serves as a sobering reminder. Even legends who once stood at the top of the charts can face battles that fame can't cure. Darius Rucker. Few country artists are as beloved as Darius Rucker, the voice who transitioned from rock superstardom into country's welcoming arms. But in early 2024, he faced a humbling reality check. A routine traffic stop in Franklin, Tennessee, uncovered pills later identified as psilocybin, along with a THC vape pen. Initially, officers let him go, but once the lab confirmed the findings, a warrant was issued. Rucker surrendered, accepted misdemeanor charges, and agreed to probation. He called the episode embarrassing, but used the platform to push for more consistent laws across the country. For fans, the shock wasn't in the severity of the crime. It was seeing one of the genre's friendliest faces on a mugshot. Still, the fallout was mild compared to others on this list. Rucker's honesty and swift acceptance of consequences allowed him to move forward with his career largely intact. Sometimes the true test of character isn't in avoiding mistakes. It's in how you handle them when the cameras are rolling. From Spade Cooley's violent downfall to Darius Rucker's roadside surprise, these 20 stories prove that country stars aren't immune to chaos. Some stumbled into redemption, others never recovered, but each left a permanent mark on the genre's history. Which of these tales shocked you the most? Drop your thoughts below, hit that like button, and subscribe for more deep dives into music's wildest chapters. After all, the songs may fade, but the stories, good and bad, live forever.